So we are going forward and straight from Finland. Jose Casal, a co-founder of Actineo Consulting, a professional Scrum Trainer, and wonderful colleague in the last 2 years that is working with us. Professional Scrum Trainer, I said that, by scrum.org. And Jose is a Kanban expert, among all other things, and he will teach us today how to build a predictable system in a complex environment. Jose, thank you for joining us today.
No, it's just I had to do this just to start well. Yeah.
He was in the Kanban phase when we have to speak quietly, and now he's moving on to the next phase.
Yes. Now is my time. Okay. Thank you for having me here and for the invite. It's my second year, I think, second year doing Beyond Agile Israel, and it's a great conference to join and meet the community here again. So thank you. So, I mean, I'm going to be talking about seeking Nirvana. Michal, you said about like teaching you this thing. I actually am not sure if that's the case, because I am seeking Nirvana. I haven't found it yet. But I think that we've got some things that might help us to encounter environments where we can have more predictability in a complex world, in the world of business that we have today. So what I'm going to do today is walk you through some of my thinking about it, things that I've learned from other people, and see what we mean about how do we achieve predictability in a complex work, how business agility happens, how to make organizations really work together. So it's going to be a little bit of a journey. Now, to start, one question that we usually have is like, I hope that when people say that we're going agile and we're trying to do agility is because because we want to be better, we want to do better. But I wonder many times, what does better look like? If I ask a CXO, I ask ourselves, what does better look like? We probably come up with very different answers. So I like to explore we as a group. I mean, there is quite a few of us here today, 255 people here. What does better look like for you? Or if you ask a CXO, what would they tell you better looks like? Now, a bit of an experiment. I'm going to try to integrate a Menti questionnaire with you on this one. So if you go to that webpage, menti.com at the top, you can see menti.com and enter the code that is there, or try to see if I can put a direct link on chat. So either enter that link, enter that code on menti.com, or follow the link that I put in chat. I'm going to give you the option to please suggest what better would look like, especially if you're a CXO. The way that this Menti is set up, you can enter a word, enter it, next one, enter it, so you can enter multiple times. So yeah, amazing. Okay, better is amazing. That's a great one. Good and cheap. Keep them coming. What would a CXO usually answer? Simpler. It's another very difficult. Quality. Good. Let's build it. Let's build more. Faster. Smile. Do CXOs smile? They do. Okay, keep bring them on. I'll just bring a whole range of things that people could do. They achieve more with less, greater business impact. It's a really interesting one, closer to the client. Profit. Never forget the profit. Joy.
Jose, we cannot. I don't know if everyone can see the Menti.
Ah, you see, I'm doing the wrong thing. There you are. Thank you for the pointer. So yeah, we got a few things. Now, as you know, what the word cloud, how they built, the bigger the board, the word, the more it has been used. So in our Menti, we can see two main ones. well, a few of them. Faster, clearly at the center, added value, more motivation, stuff like that. But you can see there is other things like, happier employees, it's good. And say achieving more with less. There's a whole range of things there. Thank you. Let's move on, because when I typically ask this question to people, you can keep building it. I get a range of answers, which many of them you have covered them. And if I was going to summarize them right now, I usually get this range of faster, cheaper. My screen has just failed. Let me try to screen share again because it's not showing. There you are. I typically hear things like faster, you have it there, the big one, cheaper, more deliveries, give me more, fewer defects, especially if you happen to be an organization where quality is an issue, things like that. Less risky. You also hear that one many times. Management and senior management organizations, they worry very much about business risk and reducing risk. Okay, so these are the typical things that we hear, and you had like pretty much all of them in your list. So I think that those answers, although they are right, they are not necessarily what the company really wants. I think many times what companies have is what they need is something a more predictable way of working process that they can trust. Predictability matters a lot, because without predictability, without trust, the other things are important, but they might not be happening. Okay, so I will say that predictability is kind of like what many times is really needed. We live in a world where we are very hooked on certainty. We're seeking certainty many times. We look for certainty. Okay, predictability is an angle of that. And we know that we live in an uncertain world, or the business that we have are very uncertain. Yeah. So how do we achieve something that gives us the level of predictability, generate the level of trust that then we can actually do, do better things for our companies? Now, we talk about predictability. It would be good to have a definition for it. And this is now quite a while ago. I saw Simon Wardley, if you know him, the guy that created Wardley Mapping, great tool for strategic thinking. And he had this definition of predictability. He said there is a measure of how accurately we can anticipate something. And I thought, okay, that's a really simple, well-crafted definition of predictability. It's talking like something that we can measure, how predictable we are. Accurately, I like that, more than precisely. Yeah, and the whole idea about anticipating something. And in the world of complexity that we live in, we need to anticipate things many times. So I thought like, okay, that's a really good definition. I'm going to steal that and credit Simon. So here it is. But there is one word in there that should be highlighted, because it will be interesting in many businesses. And the word that I'm going to highlight is measure. I will say, okay, do we measure enough in business? How do we measure things? How well do we do this? So at this point, I'm thinking that some of you may be thinking, where is Jose going with this measure? And some other people will say, ooh, I'm curious. Let's see what it is. I hope you are in this second part, and but we'll have a little bit of explanation why measuring matters. Now, Klaus, there's a little bit of a comment there. Like when we talk about agile and we talk about agility, I'm going to talk about a lot about how agility helps us to bring more predictability. How do we do it? One thing to say many times is like Klaus says, like, agile teams have nothing to do with business agility. And that can be a very controversial statement. But to use the name of a conference, if we really want to achieve business agility, we have to go beyond agile teams. Agile teams is not enough. Focusing just at team level is not enough to bring business agility. Okay, we need to look many times at what happens between the teams. What happens across the whole organization, how well we coordinate, how well we work together, how we manage the dependencies. How do we anticipate things? Remember Simon's definition, talking about anticipating something? How do we anticipate challenges and problems and blockers and things like that? So, so when we're talking about business agility, we have to keep thinking beyond the team. And this is something I want to do, is like go beyond the team. Now, talk about matrix. If you're coming from the flow world, Kanban world, there are 3 core metrics that we use. I'm going to introduce one of them. You may have heard it as lead time. You may have heard it as cycle time. I like to use the term elapsed time. It's the time is elapsed, real time. Yeah. The other one is work in progress. How much work are we doing at any given time? And the other one is throughput. How much work are we delivering? Now, with these 3 core metrics, we can do a lot to understand what's happening in our organizations. Okay, so I would like to explore them a little bit more. What we have here is just a standard board. Okay, so this will be, remember I said business agility is going beyond the team. I'm using the example of potentially a team board. But in these boards, in any board, it could be a product board, a portfolio board, an end-to-end board, and so on, we can see the metrics taking place. So how will we go about this? Just going to be quickly. So there is work that has not started. So that work, if my mouse there, that work is like, because in this case, the ideas pool, maybe work that has not started, we have done nothing with them, is options for us to work in the future. There is a point where that work moves forward in our workflow where we consider that the clock has started, the clock is ticking. We are creating an expectation of delivery. Yeah. So you will hear us in the Kanban, we'll talk about service level expectation. By doing something, we create an expectation on the customer that we intend to deliver this as soon as possible. Now, we go to the other end. There is somewhere in our system, most likely many times is just the last transition where the clock stops. Yeah, and anything that is beyond that line is work that has been considered to be done or completed. And if you're in the Scrum world, you will say that's where your definition of done is applied. Okay, so you got work that has not started, work that has been finished, and by moving through the board, the clock starts and the clock finishes for each item. This is what we call elapsed time. Yeah. So measuring that thing, when the clock starts, when the clock finishes, what's the difference? That gives you the elapsed time. How long it took us to take an idea into deliverable. So by implication, everything that is in between is work that has started and not finished yet. Yeah. In Latin America, I like the definition that they do. They don't use the term work in progress because work in progress gives us the perception that hey, we are progressing. Maybe not. Maybe things are there forever. And they like in Latin America, they use the term in Spanish, work that is half done. And it has the implication that it's potentially wasted. Yeah, the work only is valuable when it gets to done. Until then, it's potentially wasted. So it's a work in progress, work that has started and not finished. And by simply counting how many items in there, we know how much work we are now carrying. Okay. And the last metric, the throughput, it's the rate of delivery work. It's on that transition from orange to blue. It's how many tickets, how many items go through that line on any given time. 2 tickets per day, 20 initiatives per quarter, whatever it is, how you're measuring. Okay, so in this, you can see that in any Kanban board, provided that you have a measurement of where the clock starts and a measurement of where the clock ends, you can take those 4 metrics straight away at any given time. Like the elapsed time is all the time it takes to deliver, work in progress, how much we have, throughput is how much we are delivering. This will give a bit of a snapshot. What really would be interesting to see is, okay, how does this evolve over time? Yeah, so how does the elapsed time change? How does the throughput in particular change? How does work in progress change? So one chart that we use to visualize that trends is called the cumulative flow diagram. And you will see that I'm going to carry these orange and blue colors. And you got it there. The green area of work to be done is above, but I'm not visualizing it. But you see is that blue area, the blue line at the top in here, that's giving us the transition from work in progress to done. So as the blue area grows, it's showing us how much work we have delivered. And the orange area is over time, how much work is being completed. The horizontal axis is calendar, is days, and the vertical axis is work items, the number of work that we have. So you can see that although the lines are not straight, and that's natural of complex work, there is like potentially some trends that you can follow, if I can get that. One is the arrival rate, which is the signal by the orange line at the top, and the other one is your delivery rate, which is your the blue line. The arrival rate is the entry point, the work that we are taking on, and the green line is the exit line, is the work that we are delivering. Okay? So by doing this, we can actually then see at any time, we can take a snapshot and say, okay, where are these metrics? I'm going to simplify this. It's never going to be this kind of a straight line. But just remember that behind the scenes, the lines are not straight, but for simplification, I'm gonna just use the straight lines. And what you have in there, the vertical, is work items. So the difference between the difference between the arrival rate and the delivery rate is your work in progress at any day that you take a sample. If you go the horizontal, it's about elapsed time. So it's as a group. Yeah, what is the typical elapsed time for items to go from start to finish, from arrival to delivery? And if you wanted to make this look like a trigonometrical equation, the throughput is, remember, it was the rate of delivery. So is what that green line looks like. Okay, so why is this interesting? Well, what is interesting is that what this implies is that those 3 metrics are very connected. You probably know this, but they are really, really, really connected and really dependent. There is a law by Professor John Little. It's known as Little's law. And the way we express it today in the Kanban world is that the average throughput is a relation with the average work in progress divided by the average elapsed time. Okay, so it's telling us that there is a relationship between these 3 lines. So changes in one would potentially cause changes in the other. Now, there is a very dangerous word in here for complex environments. And the word should be that one. Using averages in complex work is a recipe for trouble, disaster, problems, uncertainty. Average means that you only have about 50% chance of it being right as well. Yeah. So typically in business, remember what we talk about business leaders. Yeah. Predictability was a lot about risk, managing business risk and so on. typically using averages is just carrying too much risk in our forecasting, our estimations, our planning. So it's too risky to do it. So we're gonna talk about how we can do this better, perhaps a little bit. Now, although Little's law is expressed mathematically, and people can say, "Oh, I can just put the numbers and do a mathematical equation," it's actually not true that we can do this in complex environments. This could be mathematical if it was a very, very, very certain environment. In complex environment like ours, Little's law cannot be used mathematically, can only use as a guidance. Yeah. If you see someone using Little's law and doing these equations mathematically, Dan Vacanti will chase them into the afterlife, and you don't want that. Okay, the ghost of Dan Vacanti to be chasing you for whatever. It's not a mathematical relation; it's only a relationship, a guidance. What the equation is trying to tell us is that if you change one of them, one or the other two could potentially follow, in some ways trying to preserve that relationship. Yeah, but it's not really guaranteed. It might just happen. Okay. Good. So with that in mind, now you look at the arrival rate and the delivery rate. There are only 3 potential patterns that those 3 lines can follow. Yeah, there is only 3 potential patterns. One of them is when the arrival rate is growing faster than the delivery rate. So when we deliver more than when we take on more work than we deliver, we start more work than we finish. If that's the case, what's gonna likely happen to those 3 metrics is that your WIP, as time goes towards the right, as you are going further right, WIP, the vertical separation, grows. If that's the case, the elapsed time, it's likely to also grow. That's the horizontal. And in this case, throughput appears to be stable. It might not be, but appears to be stable. It's a straight line. It hasn't changed angle. So the relationship between WIP and elapsed time, it's very sensitive. Small changes in WIP, in particular, can cause significant changes or similar changes in elapsed time. Throughput, it's much more stable, more difficult to change. And this is going to be interesting later on when we talk about this in more detail. So if you have that kind of like line, to give it a name that you will remember, and that I remember, we call this the crocodile mouth. It's opening its mouth, and eventually it will bite us and kill us. Okay? If you see CFDs like this in the company, unless it's an intentional thing, like maybe you are starting a team or starting projects or starting something, but if it's just a normal pattern, your organization is likely going to struggle. You will be hearing potentially things like, we cannot deliver, everything takes too long. Yeah, we are not responsive to the market. Probably you have much more work going on that you can actually take on. And it's because probably this mindset, the start and not finish, is your prevalent mindset. Let's look at the second pattern. The second pattern is the opposite. When we deliver more than we start. And that might be a good thing to have. That might be something that we're saying, okay, we have too much work, let's reduce it, let's make it a little bit more sensible. So, you might be looking at this thing. Now, we are finishing more work than we start. The danger with this one is that if it continues like this, and the 2 lines eventually touch, the 2 lines start touching means that there is nothing in between. You will run out of work. Okay, so looking at the 3 metrics, you can see that as time goes by, as we go towards the right, the work in progress is decreasing. The lines are getting closer and closer. that means that this elapsed time might be also decreasing. We are delivering faster, which is good, potentially. And throughput, hey, I'm still drawing it as a straight line. So it looks to be stable. Okay? So this might be something that is, again, might be good, but it has a danger that if it continues like this, if you don't manage it, you could run out of work. I call this the chopsticks. It looks like two chopsticks, like me, like, you know, if you're eating Chinese food. Cool. But the thing with chopsticks is that unless you're very good with them and you can catch the food, if you don't know how to catch the food, you're going to run out of food, you're going to starve. So the problem with this one is that you could have what we call a starvation in the system. You will run out of work. This happens many times in teams. When you hear teams saying, hey, we ran out of work, that means that you have not fed the team enough work. Okay? So you will see this kind of like situations not being good if teams run out of work. Final one. So we had one when the arrival of work is higher than the delivery. The next one, delivery is higher than arrival. What happens when you have the two rates are the same? The following the same. So the arrival rate is in balance with the delivery rate. You take as much work as you deliver. Basically, you understand your capacity. You understand how much work you can take on and deliver, and you pair that with the amount of, you pair the amount that you take with that. Yeah. If that was the case, and you look at this, all the three metrics appear to be stable. Yeah. As you go to the right, the vertical lines is always the same. Work in progress is stable. Elapsed time will be stable, the horizontal, and the throughput will be stable. So we call that the rail track. And there are only these three patterns in CFDs, if you wanted to look at this. Okay? So with that in mind then, going back to what Dan says, that if your process is not stable, it cannot be predictable. An enabler of predictability is stability. Yeah, and many organizations, we run unstable processes. Yeah, you look at the whip, it's going up and down, or it's always going up, more likely. Your velocity can be all over the place. And the idea of having stable velocity is because of things like this. So many systems are not built for stability. We don't run the process and the way we work looking for stability. Okay, so stability is important in order to get predictability. And if we keep that in mind, then, well, why I keep talking about predictability so much? Why, Jose? Why are you going on about predictability? Well, I mean, for me, predictability has some benefits. Benefit number one is trust. We said before, once you can be predictable within the complexity of our systems, then trust can appear. And actually can be trust in the system. Yeah, many times when the system becomes unpredictable, unfortunately, what we do is that we lose trust. But the worst thing is that we don't lose trust in the system. We lose trust on the people, which is entirely wrong as well. Yeah, so we need to be able to create predictability. Genders trust in the system. By trust in the system, we get to transparency. People can feel that transparency is possible. In many environments, transparency is very dangerous because there is no trust. So we talk about so much about transparency, but transparency requires conditions of trust and safety. Yeah. Once you have trust and transparency, you can get towards things like collaboration. We're talking about balance. I talk about balance and having the stability in the system. If people are overloaded, collaboration is a pipe dream. It's a fantasy. No one can collaborate when it's already maxed out, when it's overworked. Yeah, collaboration requires the ability of working. So looking at the stability, capacity, predictability, great for collaboration enablers. Put all these things together, people can start becoming happier about their jobs. And predictability also leads to satisfied customers. So we can be predictable. We should try to be predictable, or as predictable as we can in complex environment, in order to get these benefits, which I hope none of us argue are good ones to have. But we need to go around this in the right way. Yeah. The amount of times I've been working with teams and organizations that they are, well, you need to collaborate, but the environment doesn't generate that. Oh, you need to be transparent, but if you show me if you really show me what's going on, I'm gonna fire you. Yeah. So we need to get about these things in the right way. Good. Now, if you, I'm gonna ask you to do this in chat. I hope that you can all chat. But if you were going to pick one of the three, A, remember that was the crocodile mouth, B, the chopsticks, C, the rail track. Which option do you think is better for predictability? Put it in chat. And this is where we have a lot of answers. Let's see, C. Okay, that looks like we have consensus. Yeah, and I will agree. It's the right one. Yeah, when we are in balance, when we're creating a good balance between what we take and what we deliver, what gives us stability gives us predictability. So that's what we should be aiming for CFDs, for boards that look like that, systems that deliver that. And I ask you a different question now. Which one of these three do you think is the one that you have today? If you look at your boards, you look at your systems, which ones do you think that you're potentially is more common for you? You might not know, but guess. Think about your mindset. You take more work than you deliver, you take less work than you deliver, or you just keep it in balance already. Or I can see a lot of A's, which is what I would expect, especially if you look organizationally, even beyond the team. Yeah. Many times it's A. Someone said A, B, A, B, A, B. We keep flipping. So that's a sign that we are not in any sort of predictable control. So we're not managing our workflows. Great. Thank you for that. A few B's, but yeah, lots of A's. I would say that typically the answer is that you find organizations, especially if you're looking at the from organizational level, organizations are great. I mean, those CXOs that we're talking about, they're great at say, oh, new initiative, yeah, and making a crocodile mouth. But if we're thinking about like, then what is Nirvana for me? In some way, Nirvana must be getting from A to C, in this case, getting from crocodile mouth to the rail tracks. And we're gonna say that we can achieve that in 3 steps. And in each one of those steps, we're going to focus on one of these 3 core metrics. There is actually potentially a good order to focus on these metrics. All right. I'm going to again ask you in chat to write which order do you think Jose is going to follow, yeah, or would you follow? Do you start with throughput? Do you start with work in progress? Do you start with elapsed time? So please write in chat what are the 3 steps that you will follow, in which order you will look at these metrics. You will focus on the metric. I mean, obviously, by focusing on ones, the other ones will change, but which order would you go? Let's see what I get in chat quickly. So I have here, someone said WIP, elapsed time and throughput. Good. Who else? Don't be shy. There is not going to be right or wrong answer. I think I have my preferred answer for reasons, and I will explain why. But this is your context might say, hey, you need to go somewhere else. Okay, so we get WIP, elapsed time, and throughput again. Now we have someone doing WIP, throughput, and elapsed time. Someone throughput, WIP, elapsed time. So we're having kind of like all the combinations. Great. That's exactly what I would like to see. Good. And I'll give you my answer then. My answer, not that it's right, is my answer. Okay. So if you start thinking about like trying to get those lines and the crocodile is happening, yeah, the first thing that you probably need to do for predictability is that it's likely that you have too much WIP. that you at the team, product, or department, organizational level, there is just too much work going on. Yeah. So if that's the case, potentially the first metric that we need to do is look at WIP. Yeah. The first thing we need to do is like make the lines parallel. Don't make the crocodile worse. Yeah. It might be opened up, but just don't make the situation worse. You want to go from A to C, from the crocodile mouth to the rail truck. That's the first thing you need to do. Do it. You can do that straight away. So you want to achieve that. The focus is on generating some stability. It might be the system might be still be overloaded. It might still be too much work in progress, but don't make it worse. So the metric for that is going to be WIP. Make sure that the two lines are in parallel. Control your WIP, first thing. So that means that is actually relatively easy to get started with, because what you have to do is just intervene on that arrival rate. Is learning to say not yet. Is learning to say, hey, this is too much for us. And figuring out as organizationally, how do you achieve that? Not an easy conversation, but it's the easiest intervention that we probably have. Famous last words. Yeah, learning to say not yet, just intervene on that red line. Okay, don't make the crocodile grow. So what outcomes do you get? One is that we're starting to address sustainability. We don't make things worse. Yeah, and because this is going to directly affect people's workloads, it's going to affect people's stress, ability to deliver on that, and all that. This is a very people-centric step. The system might not be good yet, but it's starting to address the human dimension of Agile. Don't make the things worse. Don't kill your people with work. Okay? So you notice that this first step is about people. What sort of experiments you can do? Well, things that you could try is make sure that you visualize the work. If you can visualize all the work, even better. But visualize the work. You could try things like only, you do an one out, one in replenishment approach. So you only bring things in when something goes out. Yeah, so you can do that. You can establish something like CONWIP, constant WIP policies, which is have an agreement that the WIP will always be the same. Yeah, so the second and third ones sound like the same. They're not really the same, because one out, one in might say, hey, we're bringing one out, but we might, then bring one in as soon as we can or need. CONWIP forces you to always maintain it the same number of WIP. Okay, so 3 experiments. If you were to do this, if you were to take control, to tame your arrival rate, your red line, you could achieve that parallelization early on. Okay, that's many times, for example, what the role of a product manager, product owner will also need to do. Is like, how do we make sure that we bring realistic workloads to the team, optimize the value that we deliver, but also optimize it by just picking the right amount, and how the teams are part of that conversation, of course. Okay, so again, very people-centric approach. Let's say that we are successful. We have focused on work in progress, and we achieve stability. Step 2, what would that be? Well, we have parallel lines, but that does not mean that there is not too much work in progress. The only thing we did was stop the crocodile. Now we could say is like, how much work can we actually realistically run in our organization? We probably still have too much work. We're not making it worse, but we still probably have too much work. So the next step is to make those lines narrower. Find your point of balance. What is the realistic amount of work that the team can actually do? So this is going to be all about process improvement. A really interesting way of getting to improve or to narrow the amount of work that we have is to not do things which are wasteful. So the key focus is going to be here about improving our process. Before was just about not getting more work. We didn't have to do process improvement. It was just no more work. Here is process improvement. The key metric here, well, if we narrow it, what we're going to get is elapsed time. The focus should be, am I getting faster delivery by narrowing this? Remember, the more important thing that you had, the most popular thing that you had in the word cloud at the beginning, or what better looked like, was faster. This delivers faster. This step. Okay? But you cannot deliver faster if you haven't really first controlled your whip, or you didn't parallelize. So this intervention now is going to be right in the process, inside between the two lines where the work is being done. That's where things are happening here now. That's what we're going to do. We're going to do workflow, where we're going to do process and policies improvements and so on. Okay? We're going to look at how do we work? How do we turn all this potential work into deliverables? How well do we do that? Outcomes, faster delivery, and also a more efficient process. Okay? By looking at potential waste, potential miscoordinations, looking at dependencies, looking at external factors, looking at skill shortages, looking at imbalances between the team, anything that causes any sort of like waste, we can achieve a lot of improvements. What kind of experiments we're gonna have? But interestingly, the most effective way of getting to narrow those lines is by lowering WIP. Before, what we were trying to do was just not to make it worse. Now we're trying to really narrow it. So lowering WIP, Little's law will tell us that it's likely to generate elapsed time reductions. So you want to go faster, do less. It's almost, an anti-pattern. It's almost like companies struggle with this. You need to do less to be faster. Other one, and this is the most powerful metric that people have actually found, is the secret weapon of Agile, is looking at things like aging metrics. Yeah, and the aging metrics is looking at not letting things linger for too long. So it's trying to deliver, like if it's taking too long, deliver it as soon as you can. So by trying to deliver faster, by looking at the age and the aging process, you typically achieve faster delivery. Other ones that you can do, these are all experiments. You can look at readiness criteria, make sure that what comes into the system is ready for the people working in that system to do it, but also readiness criteria as you are progressing through the phases of the work. That could be, that's basically a good way of ensuring and preserving quality, achieving the quality you achieve. And the last one, waste reduction. I already touched on it. So look for anything that is causing an unnecessary delay and get rid of it if you can. Yeah, things like sometimes like I don't know, code reviews. Yeah, PR requests. Things that just cause delay. Look up for those. Where are they, and where are they? And trying to reduce them. Cool. That's step 2. Final step. We got the 2 lines narrow. Yeah. Now what can we do, Jose? What's the next thing? Well, try to make them steeper. Change the angle. Yeah. That is when people say deliver more. Basically, I'm changing both lines, but especially is the first time I'm doing something on the green line, trying to deliver more. Throughput is the delivery rate. Increase your delivery rate. So what the focus should be here is capability improvements, our ability to deliver more. It's all about throughput. Now is the time to start changing throughput. Now is when we have a good system that can be improved on. If you do this too soon, most companies look at throughput too early. Trying to improve a system that is not optimized or is not well designed, all the thing that you can achieve is that you increase your dysfunctions. I'm not going to say the word safe. Oh shit, I said it. Leave it there. Yeah, sometimes we try to deliver more. I mean, it's not just safe, but many times we have an incorrect focus on delivering more. You can only nail your process before you scale it. Scaling is a conversation that should only happen when you're ready for it, and we try to maintain scale too early. So this time the intervention is totally on that exit line. See the pattern that I did? First time it was like the entry line, second step was in the middle in the process. Now it's intervene on the exit line. So what we're gonna do is tools, technology, capacity to do more, increase our capacity. So the outcomes, more deliveries, hopefully, more customer satisfaction, probably customer satisfaction through the delivery of more speedier features to them, okay? What kind of experiments you can do? These are probably going to be more technical in nature. If you're in a more technical environment, process automation, try to reduce the need for people doing things. Technical debt reduction or any sort of debt reduction. Process debt probably would be better definition. Look at new techs and new technology and tools that really are going to help at this stage, yeah? And then you can scale up. You can add more teams, whatever you need to do now. But do it on a process that is as nailed as possible. Now remember, it's a complex world. It's never going to be as beautiful as those two straight lines, but don't do it too soon. Now, I don't know if you noticed this, but through the 3 steps, the first step started with being people-centric. The second step was about process improvements. The third step includes a lot of tools and technology. Hopefully this reminds you about the Agile Manifesto when it talks about people and individual interactions over processes and tools. Yeah. Doing this to me would be very much about business agility, where we focus first on people, but we don't forget eventually about processes and tools. Just don't start with the processes and tools. Start with the people. It's a common anti-pattern of Agile that we see is that we say, hey, individuals and interactions over processes and tools. And the first 2 decisions we do is that we pick a framework, that's a method, that's a process, and we pick a tool like Jira. It's an anti-pattern to do this. We should always start with the people.
I want to emphasize, Jose, we're almost out of time.
Yes, I know.
Okay,
almost
go
there.
ahead.
Almost there. So, Agile teams have nothing to do with business agility. Remember, this if you really need to apply this, try to apply it at the organization as much as you can. You can do it with the teams, but really this applies at the organization. And when you talk about the Nirvana for me of business agility, is that if I could see an organization level board where I could see these kind of faces, a company that is doing this would probably show us this kind of thing. Yeah, an initial step where you have the crocodile, likely you stabilize, but it's not great. Then you start trying to make sense, stabilize again, that's 2B. And then the final step is to then look at delivering more. Yeah, so if you're doing this at organization level, it will take time to emerge. I don't know how long, whether step 1, 2A, 2B, 2-3 will take different periods of length in your organizations, but we're talking here about months or years. It's not a matter of days, okay? So you need to have a lot of patience. And then remember what phase you are in and maintain that focus as things are happening, and be responsive to whatever you're coming up with, okay? So as a recap, I'm finishing. I know I'm running out of time. Avoid the crocs. That's both the crocodile mouth and the shoes. Flow metrics are your friends. I always say that flow metrics are the best friends of teams and departments to make better decisions, to understand what's happening, to anticipate problems. So flow metrics are your friends. It is not just about the teams. If all we are talking about Agile is about team level, we are really missing the boat now. We've been doing this for 20 odd years. Let's start looking at what happens between the teams. Look at organizational level. Yeah, that's for example, like that's where I am working most of the time these days. using things like flight levels, organizational design, complex flow thinking, and all the stuff.
Yes, they also want to visit Israel, right? For the flight level class. So we will look at this after this talk. I want to emphasize one thing that was very interesting that you said at the beginning. You said, and I encourage people to listen to you because you are a very smart person. And you say, if you want to go to achieve business agility, you have to come to Beyond Agile Israel. Oh, you said you have to do Beyond Agile. Anyway, it's the same. But thank you very much.
Absolutely. Okay, so just to finish, Michal, it's like predictability enables the trust, and in the end of the day, you're looking at the right metrics, and you can eventually achieve the nirvana of agility. I've got a few books recommended. Read Dan Vacanti, read the books from Klaus Leopold. They're absolutely brilliant. So you want to see where I've been inspired, look at those. There are 4 books from them. Yes.
So if you have any other questions for Jose, thank you so much for coming all the way from Finland right to here. And we are looking forward to really meet you in person and join your flight level class soon.